I'd love to make a distinction. So you've talked about trauma informed a few times based on these meetings. So what's the difference between trauma informed and trauma sensitive?
Yeah, it's a great definitional thing. So to me, trauma informed and trauma sensitive are one and the same. And then there's trauma focused, which I'll cover next, because that's even a little more commitment to trauma. So when you hear trauma sensitive and trauma informed, both mean that you understand what trauma is, how it impacts the human experience, and how you can conduct yourself in a way that does no harm. So in my viewpoint, everybody who works with the public could stand to be more trauma informed or trauma sensitive. So for instance, even in trauma informed curriculums that are out there, we will teach receptionists at facilities how to be more trauma informed, doctors, nurses, educators, judges, lawyers, anybody who works with the public could be more trauma informed. And in my whole genesis or evolution rather of the trauma and the 12 steps work, my quest has been to get sponsors more trauma informed, because yes, they're not professionals, but anybody who works in a leadership role within a 12-step meeting in the community could be more trauma informed. And that means we understand things like you don't force touch on people. There's certain slogans you avoid because they can send the traumatized brain into a tailspin. So to me, that is what being trauma informed and trauma sensitive both are, is that you understand trauma and you behave in a way that is at least going to prevent further harm. Mm-hmm. Now, trauma focused is a construct that is used in clinical circles quite a bit. And that is, for instance, the type of clinician that I am, where this understanding of trauma, unhealed trauma's impact on the brain drives everything that I do. So trauma focused is really like taking it to the next level. All of the treatments that I offer are really designed to help a person heal the traumatic wounding that has caused whatever they're walking into my office with. And so, for instance, the therapy I practice, EMDR therapy, is a trauma focused therapy because we really work with trauma at the heart. So not every sponsor or person in a recovery group or treatment professional necessarily needs to be trauma focused. They may not be set up for that, but everybody could be more trauma informed or trauma sensitive.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you. I'd love it if we touch a little bit on going back to like the spiritual side of things, because I just sense that comes up a lot for people. So, we've talked a little bit about, right, why people wouldn't want to go to 12 steps if they're not wanting to associate with having that religious connection, spiritual connection, or whatever. Right. But I know that a lot of people have experienced something called spiritual abuse, and this is a term used more and more these days. So what is that, and how can that affect having someone use a spiritual approach to their healing?
Yes. So spiritual abuse, my short working definition of it, is whenever God / anything spiritual is used as the weapon. So it could be God, it could be this concept of enlightenment, it can be, so I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't have to be directly theistic, because I see it happen in a lot of yoga communities too, where like the promise of enlightenment is used as the weapon. Well, if you want to be enlightened, you'll do this, you'll follow me, you'll do as I say. So, and a lot of people will split hairs about, well, is there a difference between religious and spiritual abuse? Because sometimes it happens in the context of a specific religion. But I think spiritual abuse is a good catch-all to look at things that might happen in churches, to look at things that might happen in cults, to look at things that might happen in New Age communities like yoga, meditation. Because I think we have to not let that off the hook, because so many yoga and meditation circles are seen as like the alternative, right, to the Abrahamic faiths, and they're kinder and gentler and more welcoming. Oh no, not always. Definitely not always. Because some of the worst spiritual abuse I've seen has been from like yoga gurus or teachers down on Main Street who think they have the answer all sorted out. And they use this promise of some kind of higher spiritual gain to meet their own power needs and meet their own ego needs. So in a lot of my work I've done with spiritual abuse over the years as a subset of trauma is to help people recognize that it's not all cults. because yeah, cult documentaries can fascinate us. And I think when we see things of that nature, like that's obvious spiritual abuse, but it happens at so much more of a mainstream level, especially in churches. Individuals who identify as LGBT plus or as any part of the queer community are uniquely susceptible, because so many religious and spiritual paths just do not accept people who identify as such.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where I have to do a lot of spiritual work with folks. So yes, spiritual abuse is huge, and I'm glad we're talking about it more now. It's one of those courses, because I do teach an intro course on it, where people either think, wow, that's such a great idea, I want to sign up for that, or they avoid it like the plague, because I think it's a very insidious wound that a lot of us have, but we don't really want to look at it. So yeah, I won't speak much further on that, other than it is a legitimate form of trauma. I'm glad we're talking more about it. And for years, I've tried to get the treatment field and 12-step sponsors to see that even if you are offering a more inclusive, higher power type of God, that can still be too much for people who have had spiritual trauma or spiritual abuse as part of their background, for folks who carry really just negative, horrible messages about themselves and their connection with God or higher power or any other kind of spiritual construct. So in the new version of Trauma and the 12 Steps, I do discuss spiritual abuse a lot more as even a construct that sponsors and treatment counselors have to be aware of to start with, because it could be the first time that you're hearing it is even in this discussion or chat.